The Galactic Council chamber was the biggest room Danny Cortez had ever seen. It was so large that clouds formed near the ceiling, small white puffs that drifted between the massive pillars of blue crystal. The floor was made of something that looked like glass but felt warm under his boots. Lights floated in the air without any wires or supports, casting soft shadows across the faces of beings from 12 different worlds. Danny stood at the back of the human section, trying not to stare. He was 26 years old, born in a small town in New Mexico, and until 6 months ago, he had never left Earth. Now he was standing on Station Veldris, the oldest space station in the known galaxy, watching aliens argue about borders and trade routes and things he did not fully understand. He was not supposed to be here. Not really. The human delegation needed someone to look after their shuttle, to make sure the engines stayed warm and the life support kept working. Danny was good with machines. He had fixed cars and tractors back home, then moved on to spacecraft when the recruitment officers came through his town. He was not a diplomat or a scientist or anyone important. He was just a mechanic. But mechanics notice things that other people miss. Danny watched the great machine at the center of the chamber with growing concern. The Valkyrie called it the Breath of Veldris. It was a tower of crystal and metal that reached from the floor to the distant ceiling, spinning slowly and humming with a sound like distant bells. This machine kept the air breathable for all the different species in the station. The Morthaki needed high oxygen and heat. The Delphini needed moisture and pressure. The humans needed something in between. The Breath of Veldris somehow gave everyone what they needed, all at the same time. It was beautiful technology. It was also breaking. Danny could see it in the way the crystal segments pulsed. The rhythm was wrong, like a heartbeat that skipped every few seconds. Small flickers of light ran along the metal bands in patterns that seemed random and chaotic. He had watched the machine for 3 days now, and each day the problems got worse. He tried to tell someone. He found a junior diplomat named Kevin Price and pointed out the flickering lights. Kevin looked at the machine, shrugged, and told Danny not to worry. The Valkyrie had built this station 3,000 years ago. They knew what they were doing. Danny was not so sure. The summit was in its final day. Representatives from all 12 species sat in a great circle around the Breath of Veldris, arguing over the terms of a peace treaty that would end 200 years of border wars. The fighting had killed billions. Whole planets had been burned to ash. Everyone in the galaxy wanted this war to end, but nobody could agree on how. Queen Sithara of the Valkyrie Empire sat on a throne of white crystal, raised above the other delegates on a platform of floating stone. She was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and 4 eyes that glowed with soft purple light. Her people had built this station, and they considered themselves the eldest and wisest of all species. They did not look kindly on younger races. Humans were the youngest race in the council. They had only discovered faster than light travel 200 years ago. To the Valkyrie, humans were like children playing with toys. They did not understand. Danny did not care what the Valkyrie thought. He cared about the machine, and the machine was dying. The first alarm sounded at midday. It was a soft chime, almost musical, but Danny saw the Valkyrie technicians freeze in their seats. They knew that sound. They knew it was bad. Within minutes, warning lights began to glow along the base of the Breath of Veldris. Red lights spilled across the white floor, painting everything the color of blood. The spinning crystal segments began to slow, their movements jerky and uncertain. Queen Sithara rose from her throne. Her voice filled the chamber, amplified by technology so old that nobody remembered how it worked. "What is happening? Report." A Valkyrie technician rushed forward, his forearms dancing over a control panel that grew from the floor like a flower. His voice trembled as he spoke. "The Breath of Veldris is failing, my queen. The cooling matrix has entered cascade failure. We cannot stop it. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages, their words translated by devices that filled the air with overlapping voices. The Mothaki ambassador, a being made of living flame, flickered dangerously as the oxygen levels in his section began to drop. The Delphini, creatures like tall blue dolphins with legs, started moving toward the exits. Danny pushed his way to the front of the human section, where Ambassador Linda Morrison was trying to keep her team calm. Linda was 60 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent her whole career building bridges between humans and aliens. She did not look scared, but Danny could see the tension in her shoulders. "Ambassador," Danny said, "I need to tell you something." Linda turned to him. For a moment, she seemed surprised that he was even there. Then she recognized him as the shuttle mechanic and frowned. "This is not the time, Mr. Cortez. Please, it is about the machine." Something in his voice made her pause. She nodded for him to continue. Danny spoke quickly. "I have been watching the breath of Veldris for 3 days. The Valkyrie built it to last forever, but nothing lasts forever. The cooling matrix has tiny cracks in the crystal. Over 3,000 years, those cracks have spread. Now the whole system is failing. The Valkyrie engineers are working on it," Linda said. "They cannot fix it," Danny replied. "They do not know how. This machine was built to never need repairs. They never learned how to repair it. They only learned how to watch it work." Linda stared at him. Around them, the chaos continued. The red warning lights grew brighter. The Mothaki ambassador had collapsed, his flames dimming to a dangerous orange. Valkyrie guards were rushing to evacuate the most vulnerable delegates. "How do you know this?" Linda asked. Danny shrugged. "I fix things for a living. I can tell when something is broken too badly for the owners to fix. And I can tell when the people trying to fix it do not understand what they are looking at. Can you fix it?" The question hung in the air between them. Danny looked at the breath of Veldris, at its spinning crystals and flickering lights, said, "The 3,000 years of alien technology that no human had ever touched. Maybe," he said, "I need to get closer. I need to see the inside." Linda shook her head. "The Valkyrie do not allow other species to touch their sacred technology. It is against their law. The punishment is death." Danny knew this. Everyone knew this. 200 years ago, a scientist from another species had tried to study Valkyrie technology without permission. The Valkyrie had destroyed his research, killed him, and punished his entire species with sanctions that lasted a century. But Danny also knew what would happen if the machine failed completely. The atmospheric systems would collapse. The different species would die in sections designed for other forms of life. The peace summit would end in disaster. The war would continue. Billions more would die. "I understand the risks," Danny said quietly. "But someone has to try." Linda Morrison looked at the young mechanic from New Mexico, at his oil-stained hands and his simple clothes and his calm, steady eyes. She had met kings and queens and leaders of worlds. She had never met anyone quite like Danny Cortez. "Let me talk to the queen," she said. The Valkyrie guards surrounded the breath of Veldris like a wall of silver armor. They stood 8 feet tall, their forearms holding weapons that glowed with cold blue light. Behind them, the great machine continued to fail. The spinning crystals moved slower now, and the warning lights had spread across the entire tower. Queen Sithara had called for her greatest engineers. Messages flew across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, reaching Valkyrie worlds dozens of light years away. But even the fastest ships would take days to arrive. The station did not have days. It had hours. The Morthaki delegation had been moved to emergency chambers, where artificial systems tried to give them the oxygen and heat they needed. But those systems were not designed for long-term use. Already, 2 of the fire beings had dimmed to a dangerous low flame. If they went out completely, they would die. The Delphini were preparing to leave. Their ambassador, a tall blue creature named Shallow Water Singh, made a formal announcement that his people could not stay in conditions that might kill them. No one could blame them, but their departure meant the peace treaty was falling apart. Ambassador Linda Morrison found Queen Cythara standing before the breath of Veldris, watching her technicians fail again and again to stop the cascade failure. The Queen's silver face showed no emotion, but her four hands were clenched tight at her sides. "Your Majesty," Linda said, bowing in the Velkari fashion, "I must speak with you." Cythara turned her four purple eyes toward the human ambassador. "You wish to offer help," she said. Her voice was flat, tired. "Many have offered help today. The Torvians offered their scientists. The Kreth offered their engineers. I have refused them all. I understand your laws," Linda said carefully. "But the situation is desperate. You do not understand." Cythra's voice hardened. "The breath of Veldris is not just a machine. It is a holy object, built by our ancestors at the dawn of our civilization. It has sustained this station for 3,000 years. For another species to touch, it would be a crime against our gods, against our history, against everything we are." Linda nodded slowly. "I understand. But if the machine fails completely, everyone on this station will die, including your people. Then we will die with our honor intact." Linda had expected this answer. The Valkyrie were proud to the point of blindness. They would rather die than admit they needed help from younger species. But Linda had not survived 30 years of alien diplomacy by giving up easily. "What if," she said, "a human could fix the machine without dishonoring it?" Cythra's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "My people are young. We are not wise or ancient or holy, but we are good at fixing things that are broken. We have a mechanic who believes he can repair the breath of Veldris." Linda paused. "If he tries and fails, his life is forfeit. You can execute him according to your laws. The dishonor will fall on him alone, not on your people. But if he succeeds, the machine will be saved. The summit can continue. The peace treaty can be signed." Cythara was silent for a long moment. Around them, the chamber grew hotter as the atmospheric systems continued to fail. Sweat ran down Linda's face, but she did not move. "Bring me this mechanic," Cythara finally said. Danny Cortez had never stood before a queen. He had never stood before anyone more important than his high school principal. Now he stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, surrounded by aliens from 12 worlds, looking up at a being who ruled an empire of 100 billion souls. He was terrified, but he did not let it show. "You are the human who claims to fix what cannot be fixed?" Cythara asked. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated into every language at once. "I am a mechanic," Danny said. His voice was steady. "I fix broken machines. That is what I do. The breath of Veldris is not a broken machine. It is a holy object. It was built by beings whose names have been forgotten, using techniques that have been lost. My own engineers, who have studied this machine for their entire lives, cannot repair it. What makes you think you can?" Danny looked at the great tower of crystal and metal. He could see the problems clearly now that he was closer. The cascade failure was spreading faster than before. Without intervention, the machine would shut down completely within 2 hours. "Your people built something perfect," Danny said. "Something designed to work forever without any help. But nothing works forever. The crystals have tiny cracks from 3,000 years of vibration. The metal bands have microscopic wear from 3,000 years of spinning. These problems are too small to see, but they add up over time." He pointed to a section of the machine where the light flickered badly. "Your engineers are trying to fix the system as a whole. They are looking for big problems because they expect big solutions. But the problem is not big. It is millions of small problems all happening at the same time. Sithara leaned forward on her throne. And you can fix millions of small problems? No, Danny admitted, but I do not need to. I just need to find the worst spots and patch them well enough to stop the cascade. The machine does not need to be perfect. It just needs to work. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Velkari engineers looked offended. The idea of making something work that was not perfect went against everything they believed. But Sithra's eyes had changed. There was something new in them, something that might have been curiosity or respect or both. If you touch the breath of Veldris and fail, she said slowly, you will be executed. Your body will be burned, and your ashes scattered in the void between stars. Your name will be erased from all records. It will be as if you never existed. Danny swallowed hard. I understand. If you succeed, you will have touched sacred Velkari technology. There will be those among my people who will never forgive this. You may spend the rest of your life being hunted by fanatics who believe you have committed the ultimate crime. I understand that too. Sithara stood from her throne. She was even taller than Danny had realized, nearly 9 feet of silver skin and glowing eyes and ancient power. She descended from her platform and walked toward him, stopping just a few feet away. Why? She asked. Her voice was quiet now, meant only for him. Why would you risk so much for people who are not your own? Danny thought about the Mothaki delegates, dying slowly in their emergency chambers. He thought about the Delphini, fleeing to their ships in fear. He thought about the peace treaty and the billions of lives it could save. He also thought about his grandmother. She had lived through the Houston floods when the seawalls failed and the water came rushing in. She had spent 3 days on a rooftop, waiting for rescue, watching the water rise. She had survived because a stranger in a boat had risked his life to save her. My grandmother taught me something, Danny said. She said that when you see someone drowning, you do not ask if they are your family or your friend or your enemy. You just jump in and try to save them. Because that is what people do. Sithara studied him with all 4 of her eyes. Danny could not read her expression. He did not know if she understood or if she thought he was a fool. Then she stepped aside. The machine is yours, human, she said. Save it if you can. Die if you cannot. But know that whatever happens today, I will remember your words. Danny walked toward the breath of Veldris. The Velkari guards parted to let him pass. He could feel every eye in the chamber watching him. He reached the base of the great machine and looked up at the spinning crystals, at the flickering lights, at 3,000 years of technology that no one had ever been allowed to touch. Then he opened his tool bag and got to work. The access panel had not been opened in 3,000 years. Danny could tell because the seals had fused together, bonded by time and pressure into something stronger than the original design. He ran his fingers along the edges, feeling for weak points, while the entire Galactic Council watched in silence. His tool bag was simple. A multi-tool that his father had given him when he turned 18. A roll of electrical tape, half used. Some copper wire he had taken from the shuttle's spare parts. A small flashlight. A tube of heat-resistant glue. A piece of chewing gum that he had been saving for later. These were not the tools of a Velkari engineer. They were not elegant or ancient or holy. They were the tools of a human mechanic who had learned to fix things with whatever he had on hand. Danny found a weak point in the seal and wedged his multi-tool into the gap. He applied slow, steady pressure. The seal cracked with a sound like breaking ice, and a puff of ancient air escaped from the panel. Behind him, one of the Velkari technicians made a sound of horror. To them, Danny had just wounded a living god. Danny ignored the sound and pulled the panel open. Inside, he saw the guts of the machine for the first time. It was beautiful. Crystal tubes carried flowing light in colors that Danny did not have names for. Metal wires thin as hair connected components that hummed with gentle power. Everything was arranged in perfect geometric patterns, each piece fitting into the next like a puzzle designed by beings who thought in dimensions humans could not imagine. It was also falling apart, and he could see the cascade failure spreading through the system like a disease. Small cracks in the crystal tubes had allowed the light to leak in places it should not go. The leaked light was heating the nearby wires, causing them to expand and touch other components. Each new contact created a new problem, and each new problem created 10 more. The Valkyrie engineers had been trying to stop the cascade at its source, to find the first crack and seal it. But they were thinking like builders, not like repairmen. They wanted to understand the problem completely before acting. Danny did not have time to understand. He had to act. He reached into the machine and touched a crystal tube that was leaking badly. The tube was hot, almost burning his fingers, but he held on long enough to wrap it with electrical tape. The tape was not a perfect seal, but it stopped the leak well enough that the Valkyrie watching through cameras gasped. No one had ever touched the inside of the breath of Veldris. No one had ever dared. Danny moved to the next leak and the next. His hands worked quickly, trained by years of fixing things that were not supposed to be fixable. He found a bundle of wires that had melted together and separated them with his multi-tool. He found a metal band that had cracked and held it together with copper wire twisted tight. He worked for an hour without stopping. Sweat soaked his shirt. His hands were covered in burns from the hot components. He could hear the sounds of the chamber behind him growing quieter as more delegations evacuated. But he could also see the machine responding to his work. The cascade failure was slowing. Not stopping, but slowing. Every patch bought more time. Then he found the real problem. Deep inside the machine, hidden behind layers of crystal and metal, there was a single component that did not match the others. It was older than everything around it, made of a material Danny did not recognize. This was the heart of the breath of Veldris, the original piece from which everything else had grown, and it was cracked. The crack was thin as a hair, almost invisible. But Danny could see light bleeding from it, spreading chaos through the entire system. Every other problem in the machine came from this one crack. The Valkyrie engineers had not found it because they had never looked this deep. They had never imagined that the heart of their holy machine could be damaged. Danny studied the crack carefully. He could not seal it with tape. The material was too strange, too old. He needed something that could flow into the crack and harden, something flexible enough to fill the gap without making it worse. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the piece of chewing gum. He had been saving it for after the summit, a small treat from home. Now he put it in his mouth and chewed. The Valkyrie watching through cameras did not understand what he was doing. They saw a human chewing something while their holy machine died. They thought he had given up. Danny chewed until the gum was soft and warm. Then he took it out of his mouth, rolled it into a thin strip, and pressed it into the crack in the ancient component. The gum was not a perfect solution. It would not last forever. But Danny did not need forever. He needed long enough for the cascade failure to stop, long enough for the system to stabilize, long enough for the Valkyrie to bring real repairs. He held the gum in place for 5 minutes, waiting for his body heat to help it bond with the strange material. Around him, the machine continued to hum and flicker. But the flickering was less now. The cascade was definitely slowing. After 5 minutes, Danny carefully pulled his hand back. The gum stayed in place. The light stopped bleeding from the crack. He climbed out of the machine's interior and looked at the control panels that the Valkyrie technicians had been watching. The warning lights were still red, but they were growing dimmer. The cascade failure was stopping. The machine was stabilizing. Danny leaned against the base of the breath of Veldris and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. He had just fixed 3,000-year-old alien technology with electrical tape, copper wire, and chewing gum. He started to laugh. He could not help it. The situation was too strange, too impossible, too human. A shadow fell over him. Danny looked up and saw Queen Sithara standing above him, her four eyes studying the control panels, her face unreadable. "The cascade has stopped," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "The breath of Veldris lives." Danny nodded. He was too tired to speak. Sithara looked down at him, at his burned hands and sweat-soaked clothes and exhausted face. "What did you use?" she asked. What human tool was powerful enough to fix what our greatest engineers could not? Danny held up his empty gum wrapper. For a moment, there was silence. Then Queen Sithara made a sound that Danny did not recognize. It took him a moment to realize that she was laughing. "Chewing gum," she said. The human fixed the breath of Veldris with chewing gum. The news spread through the chamber like fire. Delegates who had been preparing to evacuate stopped and stared. The Valkyrie technicians checked their readings again and again, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Marthaki ambassador emerged from his emergency chamber, his flames burning bright once more. The Delphini returned from their ships. The Torvians, the Kreth, the dozens of other species who had given up hope, all came back to witness something that should have been impossible. A human had touched the sacred technology of the Valkyrie, and he had saved them all. The hours after Danny's repair were filled with confusion and wonder. The Valkyrie engineers crawled through the breath of Veldris, examining every patch, every piece of tape, every twist of copper wire. They found the chewing gum and did not know what to think. It should not have worked. By every law of their science, by every rule of their engineering, it should not have worked. But it did. The atmospheric system stabilized completely within 3 hours. The emergency chambers were shut down. The evacuation ships returned to their docks. Life on Station Veldris returned to normal. Returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such a crisis. Danny was taken to a medical bay where human doctors treated his burned hands. The burns were not serious, but they would leave scars. Danny did not mind. He had always had scars on his hands, marks from a lifetime of fixing things that cut and burned and fought back. Ambassador Linda Morrison came to see him while the doctors worked. "You did it," she said. There was wonder in her voice. "You actually did it." Danny shrugged. The machine was not as complicated as it looked. The Valkyrie built it too well. They made something so perfect that no one could ever fix it. All I had to do was make it a little less perfect. Linda shook her head. "You do not understand what you have done. No one has ever touched Valkyrie's sacred technology and lived. No one has ever fixed something that the Valkyrie themselves could not fix. You have changed the way every species in the galaxy sees humanity." "I just wanted to help," Danny said simply. Linda laughed. "That might be the most human thing I have ever heard." The summit resumed the next day. But it was different now. The delegates did not look at the human section with the same dismissive eyes. They looked with curiosity, with respect, with something that might have been fear. What else could humans do? What other impossible things were they capable of? Queen Sithara called for a special session before the treaty negotiations continued. She stood before the assembled delegates, her silver skin gleaming under the floating lights, her 4 eyes scanning the chamber. "We have all witnessed something extraordinary," she said. "A human from the youngest species in this council has done what our greatest engineers could not. He has touched the breath of Veldris and made it whole again." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Valkyrie in attendance shifted uncomfortably. Many of them still believed that Danny had committed a terrible crime. Sithara raised a hand for silence. "I have ruled the Valkyrie Empire for 400 years, she continued. "In that time, I have learned that pride is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. We built this station to show the galaxy our power. We protected our technology with laws of death because we feared what others might learn from it. She paused, her eyes finding Danny in the human section. But the human mechanic taught me something. He did not care about our power or our laws. He did not seek to steal our secrets or prove himself superior. He saw beings in danger, and he acted to save them. He risked his life not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. Queen Sithara stepped down from her platform and walked across the chamber. Every eye followed her as she approached the human delegation. She stopped in front of Danny, who stood quickly, unsure what to do. "What is your name, human?" she asked. "Danny Cortez, Your Majesty. Danny Cortez." Sithara spoke the name slowly, as if tasting it. "I have decided that you will not be punished for touching our sacred technology. Instead, you will be honored." Gasps filled the chamber. Several Valkyrie delegates stood in protest, their voices raised in anger. Sithara silenced them with a look. "The human did not dishonor the breath of Veldris," she said. "He saved it. He treated our holy machine with care and respect, even as he patched it with tape and wire and—" She paused, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Chewing gum." Danny felt his face turn red. The story of the chewing gum had spread quickly. "Furthermore," Sithara continued, "I am proposing a new addition to the peace treaty. The Valkyrie Empire will grant humans the status of technical advisors. Human engineers will be given access to our machines, our archives, our maintenance facilities. Not to our secrets of creation, but to the knowledge needed for repair and preservation." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and objections. The Valkyrie conservatives looked ready to rebel. But other species were nodding, understanding what Sithara was doing. She was admitting that her people needed help. She was admitting that 3,000 years of isolation had cost them something important. She was asking humans to fill a gap that the Valkyrie could not fill themselves. Danny did not know what to say. He looked at Ambassador Morrison, who seemed just as stunned as he was. Sithara turned to address the human delegation directly. "Your species is young," she said. "You do not have our history or our power. But you have something we have lost. You have the ability to adapt, to improvise, to fix things with whatever you have on hand. You do not wait for perfect solutions because you know that perfect solutions do not exist." She turned back to the full chamber. "The Valkyrie have always believed that perfection is the highest goal. We built machines that would work forever. We created laws that would never change. We thought we were better than other species because we did not need to adapt." Her voice softened. "But nothing works forever. Everything changes. And a species that cannot adapt is a species that will eventually die." The chamber was silent now. Even the angry conservatives had stopped their protests. "Humans have been in space for only 200 years, Sithara said. "In that time, they have done things that should have been impossible. They have explored worlds we ignored. They have built ships that should not fly. They have survived disasters that should have destroyed them." She looked at Danny one more time. "And when our greatest machine was dying, a human fixed it with tools we would have thrown away. Not because he was smarter than us, but because he was willing to try when we had given up." The Morthaki ambassador stood. His flames burned bright orange as he spoke. "I support the Valkyrie Queen's proposal," he said. "The human saved my life today. He saved the lives of my entire delegation. If the Valkyrie will share their technology with humans, the Morthaki will do the same." The Delphini ambassador rose next, her blue skin shimmering. "The humans have proven themselves today. The Delphini support the proposal." One by one, the other species added their voices. The Torvians, the Kreth, the Sentinel Collective, the Free Traders of the Outer Rim. Each one agreed that humans had earned A new place in galactic society. Danny watched it all in a daze. He had come to this station as a shuttle mechanic, a nobody from a small town in New Mexico. Now he was standing at the center of a historic moment, watching the galaxy change because he had been willing to step forward. He thought about his grandmother again, about the stranger who had saved her from the flood. That stranger had probably never known what happened next, how a simple act of courage had rippled through time to create a family, a life. A young man who would one day save an alien space station. Maybe that was how it worked, Danny thought. Maybe every small act of bravery created ripples that spread further than anyone could imagine. The peace treaty was signed that evening, with the new provision for human technical advisors included. It was the most important diplomatic agreement in 200 years, ending wars that had killed billions and opening new paths for cooperation between species. And at the center of it all was a mechanic from Earth who had fixed an impossible machine with tape, wire, and chewing gum. The night after the treaty was signed, Danny stood alone on an observation deck, watching the stars. Station Veldris orbited a planet made of swirling purple gas, and the view was like nothing he had ever seen on Earth. 3 moons hung in the sky, each one larger than Earth's moon, each one covered in lights from alien cities. He had not slept in 2 days. His hands were wrapped in bandages where the burns were worst. His body was exhausted, but his mind would not rest. Tomorrow, he would return to Earth. The human delegation was leaving, their mission complete. Danny would go back to his job, back to fixing shuttles and transports and all the ordinary machines that kept humanity running. But he knew that nothing would be ordinary again. Footsteps approached behind him. Danny turned and saw Queen Sithara walking toward him, alone, without guards or attendants. She was wearing simpler clothes than before, a flowing robe of silver fabric that made her look almost human. "I hoped I would find you here," she said. "May I join you?" Danny nodded, still not sure how to act around alien royalty. Sithara stood beside him, looking out at the stars. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I have ruled for 400 years, she finally said. "In that time, I have met millions of beings from across the galaxy. Leaders and criminals, geniuses and fools, heroes and monsters. But I have never met anyone quite like you, Danny Cortez." Danny did not know what to say, so he said nothing. "Do you know why I agreed to let you try?" Sithara asked. "It was not because I thought you could fix the machine. Our engineers told me it was impossible. I let you try because I wanted to see what you would do when you failed." She turned too. Look at him, her 4 eyes glowing softly in the starlight. "I expected you to panic, to give up, to prove that humans were as weak and foolish as so many of my people believe. Instead, you climbed into a machine you did not understand and started patching it with scraps from your pockets. You did not hesitate. You did not ask for permission. You just worked." Danny shrugged. "It is how I was raised. When something is broken, you fix it. You do not wait for someone else to do it. You do not complain that you do not have the right tools. You use what you have and you do your best." "Where do humans learn this?" Sithara asked. There was genuine curiosity in her voice. "The Valkyrie are taught to plan, to prepare, to never act until we are certain of success. Your way seems like madness to us." Danny thought about the question. He thought about his father, who had kept their farm running with baling wire and determination. He thought about his mother, who had raised 4 children on a teacher's salary. He thought about his grandmother, surviving on that rooftop in Houston, refusing to give up even when the water kept rising. "We learn it from each other," he said. "From our parents and grandparents and the strangers who help us when we are in trouble. Humans have always had to struggle. Our planet is dangerous. Our history is full of disasters. We learned a long time ago that the only way to survive is to help each other. even when it seems hopeless. Cythera was quiet for a moment. 3,000 years ago, she said, my ancestors built this station. They were proud and brilliant, and certain that they had created something perfect. They made laws to protect their creation, laws that punished anyone who dared to touch it. They believed they were preserving greatness. She looked out at the stars again, but they were really preserving their own pride. They were so afraid of admitting weakness that they chose to let their machine die rather than ask for help. If you had not stepped forward, the summit would have failed. The wars would have continued. Billions more would have died. I did not do much, Danny said. I just patched some cracks. You did more than you know. Cythera turned to face him fully. You showed the galaxy that humans are not just a young species trying to catch up. You are something new, something different, something the universe has never seen before. Danny felt uncomfortable with so much praise. He was just a mechanic. He had done what any human would do in his place. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the ability to step forward, to try when others gave up, to fix things with tape and wire and hope, was exactly what made humans special. What happens now? Danny asked. Now everything changes, Cythera said. Human engineers will study Valkyrie technology. They will learn how we build, and we will learn how you repair. The other species will share their knowledge too. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy will work together instead of apart. She paused. There will be resistance. Some of my people will never accept what happened here. They will see humans as criminals, as thieves who touched sacred objects. Some will try to undo the treaty. Some may even try to hurt you. Danny nodded. He had expected as much. But I believe the future is stronger than the past, Cythera continued. I believe that what you started today will grow into something that cannot be stopped. Humans and Valkyrie and all the other species working together, building a galaxy where no one has to face their problems alone. She reached out and took Danny's bandaged hand in her own. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished metal. Thank you, Danny Cortez. Not just for fixing the machine, but for reminding me what courage looks like. Danny squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for giving me the chance. Cythera released his hand and stepped back. Go home, young mechanic. Rest. Heal. But know that the galaxy will call on you again. When something breaks that no one else can fix, when hope seems lost and the perfect solutions have all failed, we will look for humans. We will look for people who can patch the cracks with whatever they have on hand. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the observation deck. Danny watched her go, then turned back to the stars. In a few hours, he would board the human shuttle and begin the long journey home. He would return to Earth as a different person than when he left. Not a hero, exactly, but something more important. An example. He thought about all the other mechanics and engineers and ordinary people back on Earth. People who fixed cars and computers and broken pipes. People who held their families together through hard times. People who stepped forward when something needed to be done. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders that humans were only beginning to understand. But it was also broken in places, cracked and failing like the breath of Veldris. It needed people who were willing to get their hands dirty, to try impossible things, to patch the cracks with whatever they had. It needed humans. Danny smiled and touched the bandages on his hands. The scars would remind him of this day for the rest of his life. They would remind him that sometimes the greatest things start with the smallest acts of courage. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to step forward. The stars glittered in the endless darkness, and somewhere among them, a future was being born. A future where humans and aliens worked together. A future where perfection mattered less than persistence. A future built on hope and tape and copper wire and Even chewing gum. Danny Cortez from New Mexico watched the stars and dreamed of all the machines he would fix. And somewhere in the galaxy, the breath of Veldris hummed quietly, alive and working, patched and imperfect and beautiful in its survival, just like humanity itself.